I'm here today with Simon Rose, author of a plethora of children's literature.
It's a big word.
Yes. And Simon, you've got so many books out there. Which was the first? Let's start with the beginning. Which was the first one you wrote?
The first one, well, let's see what, it's in 2015 now. The first one, I'll just reach over here. The first one was this one here. It's called The Alchemist's Portrait. This came out, way back in 2003. It was written in 2000, 2001, I suppose. It was published in 2003. And this is all about a kid who has adventures in time travel adventures. He travels through paintings. The frames of the paintings in an art gallery goes through those paintings. They're doorways into different time periods. And that's where it all began. Yeah.
And are all your books in the same vein, or are they in different areas?
Well, it's interesting when I go to visit schools and things, and I talk to these, because there's 9 books at the moment. I talk to the kids all about all these books. They say, "Oh, so they're all about time travel?" Well, no, they're not, because some of them are, yes, admittedly. The second one was about time travel, but the third one was about cloning and secret experiments and evil scientists. And the Emerald Curse, which was the fourth one, was inspired by superheroes, comic books and things that I read growing up, Marvel Comics, DC, that sort of thing. And I think I returned to time travel and the medieval thing after that, for the Heretic's Tomb. Then there were a couple that weren't really time travel related, and then the Sphere of Septimus, which came out last year, was another dimension, magical land, Narnia type thing. And then Flashback, which is the most recent one, is a paranormal mystery adventure story, I suppose. So yeah. So,
and I have to say, Flashback's really good. That's the one that I've read.
Oh, you read that one, yeah, but you haven't read the others for some reason. Yes,
I have not, and
you've had no time.
I need to correct that.
You've been writing your own books,
apparently.
Yeah.
What got you started on writing children's books?
Well, I think that it was just, I think most people, unless you're a teacher, or you've got a large extended family, you don't really come, as an adult, you don't really come into contact and have children in your life until you're a parent. Mm-hmm. And the first children's books I came into contact with as a parent were what I would call, I suppose, those fluffy bunny books and the lift the flap and stroke the puppy's fur, those sort of books. And then from there, the simple books, for picture books for children. And I think on one occasion I was probably reading a bedtime story to my son, and he loved the story, and I closed the door and I thought, if only I could write something like that. That's great. And the following night I'm reading a different story and I'm thinking, this is terrible, but the kid loves it, goes to sleep, close the door, and I think, who the heck wrote this? Anybody could write this. My dog could have written this story. Surely I could do better than this, can't I? Anybody could.
Okay.
And so I began, but I couldn't do I started off thinking about fairy tale type stories for 4 and 5 year olds, not really knowing the different age ranges, but not being an illustrator at all. Mm-hmm. Apart from, I could do pictures to do say this is what I'd like on the cover, but I could never do illustrations. So that way I immediately upped the age range that I wanted to write for. And I read the Harry Potter books, read the first one, and then the second and third ones read them back to back in a weekend, I think. And that's when I realised that, yes, this is my age range. This is what I'd like to write, age range I'd like to write for. This is the danger level. This is the excitement level, and about the length of the book. With those first ones, not the humongous ones she did later.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to write about wizards and dragons and magic and things. That wasn't really my thing. So I gravitated, like most people should do. They should probably gravitate towards what interests them. Mm-hmm. It's no point thinking, well, everyone's writing about... like in your case, everyone's writing about trains. I should write a book about trains. Well, are you interested in trains? Well, no. Well, it's going to be more like work then. You're not going to enjoy it. So in my case, it was time travel, other dimensions, superheroes, fantasy, evil scientists, and that's what it's been about.
So it's sort of a case of write what you know, or in terms of that, write what you love, because you're not actually a time traveler, or...
Well, that's right. That's what people. So that's what people. So that's the question that comes up sometimes. People say, "Oh, you should write." Well, yeah, but are you actually? Did you go to Hogwarts to be a wizard, or have you travelled on a spaceship to Pluto, or have you shrunk down and gone to the North Pole, or whatever it may be? I mean, obviously not. It's fantasy, but if you enjoy that, then you're going to find it much easier to write the books. I mean, there are some authors who write a lot of series of books about sports related stories, about hockey or soccer or basketball or whatever, because they're interested in that. And then I suppose there are authors of adult books who've written espionage thrillers or again, time travel stories or murder mysteries, because they're maybe ex-policemen and they know all about forensics and things. So it's what they know, and it makes it more like more enjoyable. Still work, but it's enjoyable work.
Gives you more depth.
Yes,
especially
I think so.
if you're familiar with the subject.
Yeah.
Well, that's quite a collection, but there's more. There's more coming.
Well, there are. Yes, I think you've got to keep writing. Well, I say unfortunately. I think if you've got ideas, you seem to keep churning these things out. I mean, the flashback story is I should back up there that some of these stories have had sequel ideas. The first one, the one about the paintings, I immediately thought, oh yeah, there's more here. But it never came to me. I started writing other things, and some of the stories are standalones and couldn't go anywhere else. And some of them had sequel potential, but I've never explored them. But with Flashback, I was approached a publisher and said, well, would you be interested in more adventures in this world with these characters? And she was quite keen on the idea. And so I'm now working on 2 sequels to that book.
Oh, wow.
Which will come out year after next, I think. Because in between, there's another book, a sort of technological computer thriller type thing coming out next spring.
Excellent.
That's in between, and then there'll be the 2 sequels.
Wow.
So yeah.
And do you have more? I'm sure you have more coming up beyond that. But you've also written other non-fiction books for children.
Yes, I have. I mean, that's something that I didn't do that at first. I mean, that was when I first did the first book in 2003. I was just doing novels and things. But in the last 4 years or so, I've written a lot of non-fiction books for children. And these have been for the older end of elementary, I suppose, grades 5 and 6, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. These are on a variety of topics, history and science and the environment and current issues, government bodies, I think, sometimes, like the House of Commons and things in Canada, the Senate, all these sort of things. It's been about 75, maybe, over the last little while. These are books with lots of facts, lots of pictures, graphs and charts and maps and things like that. And I've been very fortunate that people have wanted me to do those. And that's been over the last 3 or 4 years. And so altogether, so if you count those, there's close to 100 books yet. I don't think there is 100 yet. Not the big number yet. Will
there be a big party when you do the?
I don't know. Maybe there should be.
I think there should
a book
be.
launch.
That's a pretty big deal.
But as well as that, there's also these books on the sign of it. These have all been published by traditional publishers. But I dipped my toe into the self-publishing world a couple of years ago and started writing guides for writers, because I seem to do a lot of teaching and things and telling people all about, well, this is how you can create characters or create a story, and I was doing editing and consulting for other people, so I put that into a book and called the Children's Writer's Guide, and that's on Amazon, and it's a print book and an e-book, and then there's one called the Working Writer's Guide and a few others. And I just did another one about writing for social media, because I do that a lot too. I do websites and things, so I thought, well, test the waters of self-publishing with these guides for writers, all of which are on the website. You can learn all about it.
I can see the writer's guide, writing for social media. I can see that being a very useful piece.
Yeah. Well, it is. I think these days, as you know, writers have to do an awful lot of marketing for themselves these days. But it isn't really for writers. The Children's Writer's Guide has a lot of that stuff in there. But the Social Media Writer's Guide is more for people, well, if you, as a writer, say, well, I'd like to offer my services to a company and write their website copy or their blogs for their company or be their Facebook uploading person. It's more for that, but it's something that I thought I'd give it a try and see how it goes. So I do lots of things.
Apparently you do. You're touching on marketing and for authors and for other companies and stuff. But what about for other authors and things? Is there stuff that tips and things you could suggest to people for marketing and? No,
that's all classified information, I'm afraid. When you're a published author, you cannot share that sort of stuff with new people at all. It's completely
not unless you buy the Writer's Guide.
But I think there's all sorts of things you can do. I think to be a writer. I think you and I have talked about this before. In that you have to sit down when you start off. And there's a group I went on Facebook called Children's Authors and Illustrators on Facebook, and this question comes up sometimes, and people say, "Well, my book's just come out. What do I need to do to promote it?" And it's like, well, make a list, as we've said the other day. Make a list of everything you could possibly think of to advertise yourself, including renting a hot air balloon, putting a billboard on the moon, or having a banner trailing after a plane. Things you will never be able to do or afford. But write them all down and then decide, okay, some of these things are going to be good for me, and decide what you want to do. Because everything's not going to work. I've done some trade shows before that haven't worked. I've tried some online marketing, it hasn't worked. I do all the social media stuff, and some of it works for me, some of it doesn't. And being a children's writer, I can visit schools and market myself to schools, which adult authors can't do because the market isn't there. And some people do farmers markets and craft fairs and things, which I've tried before and they haven't worked. And some people book signings don't work. And as you know from locally here in Calgary, some bookstores are better for you than others.
Yeah.
And so you'll choose those locations. And times of year. I mean, you don't do a book signing in the first week in January or something like that. And the summer can be quiet. So you just pick your times. So.
And certain bookstores are not maybe for your book too. I mean, they may be focused entirely on adult literature, in which case your books might not fit. Or
that's right.
And there are some that are focused entirely on children's. It's like, please come.
It's the same thing with online books too. I mean, sometimes with e-books as well. I mean, the e-books are such a big news, and everyone's writing e-books. But there are only certain genres of e-books that seem to do well. I mean, romance books do well, and thrillers and crime books and murder mysteries do well. Self-help does quite well, but children's books don't seem to do well as e-books. Certainly not picture books. Some of them are not really picture books, they're more like apps for iPads and things, where you can move things around on the screen. But for this age range, these are middle grade books, and even for young adults, it's not as big a market as people would like it to be, and that could change, you know. But I'm waiting to see, I suppose, when it will change.
Yeah, the market is definitely changing. I know they were saying that ebooks have plateaued a bit. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, that was on the on Facebook. I think last week, people, I think at one point, ebooks were going to overtake print books, and print books were going to be like dinosaurs and gone. And then it seemed to be, I think it's not. I think people are tending to say now that ebooks are that's it. It's a fad. It's gone. They're going to disappear. Yeah, they're not. They're going to be the same. They're going to be probably occupy 30-40% of the market probably, and maybe print. But people tried it and they prefer print, but they're not going to ignore ebooks altogether.
Yeah, I think it's found its niche maybe.
Yeah, and I think audiobooks seem to be making a bit of a comeback too. I think
I have heard that.
Which at one somebody I knew they produced an audiobook a couple of years ago, and I thought, really, should I be doing that? I'd forgotten all about audiobooks. But now it's people like to have them in the car. Or on treadmills at the gym and things, because you can walking the dog. You're out walking the dog and you can listen to you can read a book or listen to a book.
Have you done an audiobook?
This one, Flashback, has got an audiobook.
Okay, excellent.
This one has an audiobook and an ebook in the various formats, and there's a print version. And there's an audiobook, I believe, of The Sorcerer's Letterbox, which was the second one, which was done for the CNIB years ago, and I have a copy of a disc, I think, somewhere. But the other ones, no, there haven't been any audiobooks. But with the publisher, Taiki Books, I mentioned Taiki Books, who published Flashback and are going to do the sequels and the other one next spring. They produce audiobooks for all their books, so that's nice. Okay. Nice option.
Good. Yeah, I've been I'm looking at an audiobook for my.
Well, you should, because in your circle, you must know people who have done voice acting and yeah, exactly.
A couple of hundred.
Yeah. And I mean, yours could work as an ebook too. But we're not talking about you right now.
No, we're not. We're talking about you.
Right.
So, but my friends are available to help you with your ebook.
Oh right, yes, exactly.
With your audiobook. So anyway, you're also working on lots of other stuff other than books. You are an editor. I know that firsthand. Mm-hmm. What else do you do with training, teaching? You have quite a repertoire.
I do a few. Yeah, I do quite a lot of stuff. Really, I think that's something that I found when I did that working writer's guide. I mean, I'd done the children's writer's guide about tips for people. Then I thought, well, there's something missing. I was going to put stuff in that book, which was all about, well, if you want to make a living as a writer, and it's not easy, unless you get a bestseller and a movie's made of it. You should probably. There are lots of other things you can do, and so I produced that other book about that sort of thing. And some of it was consulting, I suppose, on other people's books. Editing is see, editors will do with punctuation and grammar and put the commas in and things like that, but they won't really tell an author, well, I don't like your book and it's terrible and it'll never sell. Whereas I tend to be the more that end, as I do the punctuation and stuff, but I also tell people in a substantive edit, more or less, well, this doesn't really work, or this chapter's great, or have you thought about putting this in? And that's much more valuable, I think, to an author than just a straightforward grammatical check when you think, well, it's grammatically correct, but it's a terrible book and it'll never sell. It doesn't really help.
Yeah.
But the teaching thing, I've been doing teaching in schools for a long time, which sort of comes and goes up and down. Sometimes there's a market, sometimes there isn't. But I teach at the local universities, children's writing, children's classes. These are classes for adults who want to write for children. So I do a few of those.
Oh,
so and and I do websites for people as and when I'm required. So all sorts of things you have to do to try and make a living.
Absolutely, and there's lots of tidbits about all these roles I know on the children's writers and illustrators on Facebook.
Because that's sometimes those things come up. I mean, people are interested in especially when they're new and they want to know, well, how do I market myself? And everyone wants to try and make a lot of money and try and sell lots of books, but it's really, some people don't know where to get started, and it's important to consider everything. And some of it you're not going to be able to afford to do, and some of it we can't afford to travel around whichever country we live in on tour like a rock band. You can that'd be expensive too. So you've got to be aware of lots of ways to market yourself, because even if you have a publisher, you're expected to do a lot of that yourself.
Yeah, definitely, I think so. You've got a YouTube channel. Speaking of, I do.
I have a YouTube channel of my own that I've got my own videos on. But early this year I started a YouTube channel called Fantasy Fiction Focus. Which is basically me interviewing people like yourself, and not children's authors particularly. I tend to stick with people who've written science fiction, fantasy, things like that for adults. I don't particularly want to interview people who've done picture books on that. It's mostly for the fantasy genre and science fiction genre, which yours fits into though. I do interview young adult authors and middle grade authors who've written books in that genre. But that's...
someone could have 9 interviews with you for that channel, with your book.
That's right. I never thought of that. I should look into that. Yes, I should. But it's been okay. It's the whole idea behind Fantasy Fiction Focus is that the author is a lot of it's done by webcams. They're in their home. This is the author. And look, wow, they actually have a house, and they're an ordinary person, and they're here talking to us about their book and what's inspired them and everything. And it's gone down reasonably well. It'd be nice if it had millions of views, but again, another one of those things you've got to try.
One thing at a time. I've watched a couple, and they're great.
Yeah.
And lastly, you've also done some film and screenplay work.
Have I? Mm-hmm. Oh yes, I have. I was in one of your films, one of your movies. I didn't have much of a role, ladies and gentlemen, but I'm hoping that my performance will Hollywood people will be chasing me. But
stellar. It was stellar.
Yes, it was. I haven't seen it yet. But no, I've done some film work. I've done a bit of some writing for film, which again was a new venture for me. It was nice, but it's a bit like you in reverse in some ways, because you've done the screenplays and thought, well, I need to know how to turn this story or any story into a novel and add in description as opposed to man opens door. You've got to put more in from a screenplay to a novel. So I had to learn how to do the formatting and things for a screenplay, and it was a very enjoyable experience actually. And I'd like to do more of it. Whether it'd like to be a more full-blown film scripts or just short pieces, I'm happy with either.
Yeah.
I'd do commercials or anything really.
So what's your favorite part of all those things that you do, from the children's books to the teaching to the even the film work? What's your favorite right now? What's your favorite part?
Fiction, writing fiction. It would always be that. I think these days I think by the end of this year I will probably have completed. In fact, probably about now actually at this time of year, October, November, I will have probably written 4 books this year, which is the first time I've ever done that. And it's just that it's been a very creative spell, and it's just very nice. None of it's felt like work. It's the fact that you've got these ideas, and I think something you mentioned before was when you've got this outline. And you start to deviate from the outline, but not in a bad way. You get this other idea, and you think, oh yeah, they could do that there, and you come up with a whole new piece. It's usually somewhere in the middle. It's never at the beginning or the end. It's somewhere in that big chunk in the middle, and it's all flowing out of your head, and you've got this wonderful inspiration. That's the best thing about it, I think.
Excellent.
If I could just do that and nothing else, it'd be great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally understand that.
Yeah.
Totally understand it. So where can people get your books?
They can get them everywhere in some ways. The books, or I have copies of my own on my that I sell through my website, or they can contact me in person to get the copies themselves. But all these books are also available in bookstores locally. If they're not in stock, they can order them. They're all on Amazon and Barnes and Noble in the States and things like that. So people can get. There's no excuse for people not buying them.
And if you actually have to do it in person, you go to Comic-Con here in Calgary.
That's true. I can go to. I do go to the Comic Expo in April each year, and I'll be there again in 2016, as far as I know. And I have books there too. So, but people can contact me anytime, through the website. And I do local book signings as well for a lot of the time during the year.
And book signings are listed on your Facebook page?
Yes, I put them on Facebook and I put them on the website if people can see them on the events page. But if I've got a local signing, I put it on Facebook. As an event. Yeah.
And what's your website?
It's I think it's on there, is it? Yes, it is behind me. But it's obviously simon-rose.com. You've got to have a little hyphen in there. I couldn't get my full name as a website years ago. I had to have a little hyphen. So yeah. So no excuse. And you just search me, and I'm there.
Perfect. Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, very much. Thank you.
Great chat.
Thank you.